Hello and welcome to the Southbound Sports Show. I'm your host, Richie Leahy, here with my co-host, Matty B. Matt, I got a mailbag question for you right off the top. Who had the worst week one, Scott Frost or our very own Matty B?
I'm gonna in the toss-up. I would have to say Scott Frost probably had the worst weekend. Score did not look good for the Bulldogs. However, I think on closer review of the film, it was a little better than what the film had or what the final score shows. For those that don't know, we did not win the opening game. However, there were a lot of good things that came out. The offense was a lot more productive. We made some positive strides forward that hopefully will carry over into the next couple weeks, and looking to rebound at our home-ish stadium.
Why do you say ish stadium?
Because our current stadium is under a renovation project where we're getting the turf and we're getting bleachers and the whole shebang. However, there's been a little bit of an issue with getting all of the necessary permits and approvals to begin construction. So we're actually moving our home games to another field. So essentially we have no home games per se, but we have a home game scheduled for Friday night.
Now, is it an actual field like nearby that's not related, or is it just a different high school football field?
It's a different high school football field. So
okay.
we're going to Hollidaysburg this weekend.
Oh, that's a nice field.
Yes.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah, I was thinking like you guys were just going out to the woods and you weren't going to have locker rooms and it's just going to be like a field.
Well, jokingly, I had said to my athletic director, why don't we just turn it into the traveling road show? We'll go to different places, check out their facilities, claim it for our own.
Well, speaking of traveling road shows, that brings us to our first topic. The fake high school from Ohio that was going around and playing football games and got their team on ESPN. And so for those of you that didn't follow along, I'll kind of fill in some of the details. And before that, I want to say that we had a similar story, I believe a few years ago, where ESPN put on a game that was a beatdown because they didn't do like their due diligence and like look and see who was playing who. And it's the same thing where we talked about St. Francis in Maryland with Biff Poggi when he was still there. I think he's on the Michigan staff again, but I could be wrong there. But his issue was everyone in Maryland didn't want to play him because of all of the recruiting or whatever that was going on, and his team just ended up being stacked for Maryland. Now, whenever you're playing interstate games, they don't know like how good your team actually is or their division. So this team from Ohio came out. Turns out that there's no school. They named it Bishop. What was it? Seville?
It was Bishop Sycamore.
Sycamore. Yeah. See,
there's not even a Bishop Sycamore. It's just like a randomly made up name.
Yeah, but to be fair, how many people research the bishops or even know them? You could make up a bishop name and they would not know. Like there's a bishop in the X-Men. I don't know what his real name is, but if they made a school up after him, I wouldn't be surprised. So they go ahead, put together a team of junior college dropouts from what I've read. But it didn't say that they were junior college football playing dropouts. Just that they were kids that went to junior college and dropped out. So they decide to have their own high school. Don't know how they got clearance in Ohio, or if they did. And I don't even think they did, to be fair. Because it did say that they were not a part of the Ohio high school athletic whatever. And what they ended up doing is they took their show, or their game, to Pennsylvania on Friday, right? Is that the right day?
I think that sounds right.
So they play a game on Friday, they lose.
They get beat.
Immediately, they go. Did they go to Florida, or was it like a? I don't know where they ended up playing.
No, it was at the in Canton, where the Hall of Fame stadium was.
So then IMG Academy, the biggest school basically in Florida, we talk about them all the time for recruiting. They come up and play them. I thought it was like a neutral site game. They come all the way up to Ohio to play them, and they destroy them. The first thing that the announcers were talking about was like, hey, these kids could get hurt out here, whatever. I know they didn't know the backstory, but like, okay, they're high school players. If they're going to play against teams that are bigger, if you play in state, like if you make the state playoffs and you're from a smaller region, you're going to play against those guys. Like, no matter what. It doesn't matter. If you end up getting hurt, like, that's just the game. So I didn't like the focus on that because I feel like the fear-mongering against football, like, oh, these guys could get hurt, these guys could get hurt, it's going to turn off young kids that are watching the game thinking, oh my gosh, there must be so many injuries that I'm not seeing. I'm not going to play football. And it's weird because it's their biggest cash cow is football. That's why they're behind the secret Texas and Oklahoma to the SEC. But anyway, this team goes up, gets killed by IMG on national television, and then ESPN kind of just was like, yeah, we didn't know anything about them. How are we supposed to know they're that bad? But I want to get your perspective, Coach. Like, how would you even pull that off? And wouldn't you be embarrassed?
Well, that's the whole time. Like, I saw the game was on, but like it was such a beatdown by the time that like I was like tuned in that I really wasn't paying that much attention to it until after the fact. But I thought, like, if as a high school coach, if they're like, hey, do you want to play on ESPN? And it's like, yeah, who would we be matched up with? And they're like, IMG Academy. And you're like, you mean that high school that is like probably a high percentage of their players are already committed to multiple Division I schools? That one? Like, yeah. Like, unless you're on major league drugs, why would you ever accept that? And you know, they're saying there's like there's junior college dropouts, and they have to be older. They're junior college dropouts, and got absolutely smacked by these guys. So I was in awe that like you would even think, oh yeah, that's who I want to go up against.
Well, see, some of them, it looked like they had profiles from before. I don't know what the deal was. Like, if they were getting recruited as a 3-star recruit, didn't end up happening. They end up at a junior college, maybe academics, athletics, who knows. And then they're back with a brand new profile trying to get recruited again. So I wonder how many, it was just like a 1-year deal where they're like 19 or 18 if they were younger. And they're like, look, this is our last chance. If we can get enough guys together, we can get highlighted in one of these games. And like, what if they would have won? Like, what would have happened? They still have eligibility for college, right?
I guess.
You would only lose the junior college year, I believe, which you could then use as a red shirt. The second high school year doesn't count, to my knowledge. They're not in class. There's no school.
I mean, I just don't know. Like, are these guys, like, to be at the junior college, aren't you a high school graduate? So wouldn't that disqualify you?
For high school. Not for college, though. Like, if their entire purpose was to say, hey, like, let's say you're a high school legend, and you try to go to college, it didn't work out, you went to junior college, and you get a call up from me, and I say, hey, I'm putting together a team. We're going to play IMG Academy on ESPN. This is a brand new chance for you to earn another scholarship. I mean, you went the junior college route, so you're going to lose 1 year. But you can come in, transfer. They're not going to know. They're not going to know, and they're not even going to care. You got to come up, though, and show out. If that game ended up being close, no one even looks into it. No one, right?
Right.
Like, if IMG wins, they're not going to be like, oh, yeah, I think they're playing ineligible players out there. Like, I mean, if you're really not going to, I mean, I guess maybe someone on IMG is looking at their roster and like, yo, aren't you 40? And the guy's like, yeah.
It looked like when they turned their roster into ESPN, like ESPN should have flagged it because basically, like, it looked like you just randomly just put names on paper. Like, You get a printout, just pull up a Word document and just type random names and numbers. It's like what they turned in.
Well, I don't want to get political with this, but just so people that are aware, there's like a big push for charter schools and like vouchers and things like this. There are schools out there that their whole purpose is to train your child, I guess, not a student, to do athletics. Like you can come in, do your school all virtual. You're at like a virtual academy, and then your entire day is like doing swimming laps or swim training, for the Olympics. So things like this are only going to get worse. It's not going to get better. And like we talk all the time, so-and-so high school, guess what? They're combining with another school because they didn't have enough guys for football. And that's the only program that's actually getting any money for their athletics. So they're going to split the revenue to try to pay for some other sports, or they're down to 7 sports or whatever. So, I mean, I don't think it's going to get any better. And I would only, I bet that you're only going to see some of these power schools and kids that aren't good enough to make it in 20 years, like they just might never have the opportunity to play anymore. Right?
I mean, it makes sense.
I mean, schools are already replacing traveling sports teams with esports. Like, it's happening. Like, you can deny it or whatever, but there are teams, because guess what? You don't have to travel, really. You can play online. You might be able to travel for some meets or whatever, depending on what game you're playing. It costs basically nothing. The schools get the funding for technology from the government. Like, that's usually paid for. And then you already have the equipment. Guess what? Guess how many liabilities you're going to get? No kid's going to get, like, carpal tunnel in high school, really. I don't think so. I don't know if that's a thing. So, like, how are you going to get injured playing esports? So, like, you don't have that insurance, which is a big thing for football, as we know. I mean, I just feel bad for the kids because you're not going to have the opportunities that, like, I had growing up. I mean, I guess some schools, I was more rural, so, like, I couldn't go swimming. We talked about fencing or, like, luge. Like, we never would have ever been able to play either of those. Couldn't play hockey. Like, I almost had an opportunity to play club hockey in college, and then till the costs and everything got set up, like, it just didn't work out. So, like, you have that part, and it's like, could have played club. Did it really matter? No. No one's getting drafted in the NHL from club hockey, But just to have, like, a little bit of experience doing something like that. And that's what I think some of the high school kids are, because you don't do the physical stuff. You start to rotate phys ed where you're going once every 6 days. How is that getting you in shape? Like, that's what I saw down here for, like, the schools in North Carolina. Some of them, you rotate your specialties every 6 days, Matt. You get phys ed not even once a week anymore.
But do you know the rationale for that, though, the 6-day rotation?
No, do you have some wisdom for me?
Yes, I do. Because if you do 6-day rotation, then when are most, like, I'm gonna ask you to dip into the time vault here, but, like, when are most assemblies or holiday type things? Mondays and Fridays, right?
Yeah, I guess.
So if you always have Monday and Friday, like, you have one class at, like, a PE class or an art class that, like, is always, like, real lopsided, whereas if you adjust the schedule for that and you make it the 6-day rotation, then your different classes will miss at different times. So even if you do still have your break, like you have a long vacation because of a holiday, you get a Friday, Monday, it doesn't really affect, like, you're not missing those special classes.
Well, see, now I'm wondering, I thought I had gym more often, to be honest. But I don't know, because we did block scheduling, so. But that's getting way off topic.
But that's elementary. High school, like, it makes more sense because you have to.
Well, that's what I'm thinking is high school and stuff.
So, like, high school, you have to have so many credits of physical education. So you're going to have your gym class credits regardless.
Yeah, but they're switching some of those to video gaming, Matt. That counts for physical ed because it's a team activity.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, except you're like, yo, did you bring that Mountain Dew? What'd you want? Baja Blast? Or what's the new one that I liked? Major Melon. That's a classic Mountain Dew. I'm telling you, dude. I just feel bad because like now we're talking about fake high schools that pretty soon with AAU taking over basketball, and I want to get into the NFL here in a second. But my last point: AAU taking over basketball, high schools, fake high schools, charter schools that only play football or whatever, IMG Academies where you're mainly playing football. That's going to be the future, and then there are going to be kids that are like, "Hey, I want to play football." And their dad's like, I'm not driving you an hour to practice to go to the state capitol to play. Like, luckily, like I'm in an area where if I had kids that want to play football, I could very easily take them to that if it came to that extreme. But I'm also on the rural side, so if you drive a half hour in the other direction, they might not have teams in a couple years. Who knows? So then everyone's going to be like, you're either going to have to move closer to cities, and it's going to be nuts. So anything else you have on high school stuff?
Just like with that whole Bishop Sycamore thing, I think like ESPN's head's in the right place. And I like the showcases that they have, because to me, it's amazing to see what other high schools from across the country are able to produce, because you see so much negativity with football, and everyone's real quick to say about like the negative stuff, but there really is a lot of positive. I think that positive stuff that you see on TV is also good too.
So my question to you is, how jealous are you going to be if that head coach of Bishop Sycamore gets an offer for college as a head coach or a bigger high school?
Well, he's currently had a arrest warrant for fraud, so I'm pretty sure he's just going to be working on getting a lawyer.
But what's the fraud, though? The fake high school?
I don't know. They just said that he had an active, like during the game broadcast, I think they were like, he has an active arrest warrant, and then he got arrested.
That's funny. I don't even know. Like, could you imagine if you're like, man, they got a warrant out for my arrest. I got to do one last thing. What can I do to make it? I know. Let's get a bunch of guys together. Let's have a football team. We'll have a game on ESPN. Then I'll be able to clear my name.
They'll see how good I coach, and they'll have to quit me.
Think of all those crimes that are committed by guys in the NFL. Like, they easily get out of it. I can easily get out of it once I get my name up there. It's like, oh, man. Speaking of the NFL, though, get into roster cuts. Cam Newton, the biggest name that's fallen off, and I've already seen Steeler fans talk about, hey, we need Cam Newton. And I would just say, not yet. Because everyone's saying, like, right now it's very divisive if you go online, like the Steeler Twitter, whatever, and you're seeing people are saying, hey, we need to sign Cam Newton. It's like, yo, we already have Haskins and Rudolph, and you're forgetting Roethlisberger. What the hell is Cam Newton going to do? The only reason you would need him, and you hope that another team doesn't sign him, is if Roethlisberger inevitably gets hurt. Which is a true thing that you're worried about. Because, like, if he gets hurt, and then Haskins has a game like he had against the Panthers, where his QBR was so low that, like, he should have been cut, like, immediately after that game if they didn't still believe in his upside, that it's like, all right, you roll him out there for 2 games, and then you're like, all right, Cam, come on. Can't be any worse. I mean, you're used to running around taking a bunch of hits like Ben Roethlisberger anyway. What's the difference? Maybe we'll be able to run the ball with you actually actively being a threat, instead of Ben just seems to, like, run forever and get nowhere. So, I don't know. I'm surprised the Patriots made that move. They also signed Quinn Nordine, and he's going to be their starting kicker, which if you followed that saga, that was the kid that Harbaugh had the sleepover with. He was like the top-rated kicker that year. And then he's been so inconsistent for Michigan, it was like, oh, he's never going to. Like, you can't be that inconsistent. He goes to the Patriots. They signed him. They said that he was, like, actively filling out his LinkedIn. And he, like, was applying for jobs when the Patriots called him for a tryout. Probably because, like, Belichick and Harbaugh are buddies or whatever. So he calls him up. They have a preseason where he's knocking 50-yard field goals, but he's also missing extra points and stuff. Like his percentage wasn't good. It was very similar to what he did in Michigan. It's like, wow, he made that super long field goal, and then when we need him to make the extra point, he missed it, or he's missing like a chip shot. So they sign him, and they're keeping him. And I'm like, what is Belichick doing? What's his plan here? You're cutting Cam Newton. You're going with the rookie, right? Mac Jones?
Yes, the kid from the Play 60 commercial.
Is that what he's from? I know he's from Alabama. They won the national championship. So, is that his name, though, or am I getting it wrong?
Yes, you're right.
All right, that's what I thought. All right. I forget, once I kind of block Alabama outside of the playoffs or when they're beating Ohio State, you know. And so then they do the Nordine thing. Do you think they're trying to tank?
I don't know.
Because,
no.
Matt, he hasn't had a good winning percentage without Tom Brady. I just wonder, why would you tank this year? Do you know of any big-time stud quarterbacks that, you would... there's no Trevor Lawrence this year, right? At least not yet.
Mackenzie Milton.
Are you serious? Wasn't he the one that had the broken leg?
Yes, and it's recovered with science.
Oh, my gosh. They were afraid of Alex Smith. Even Ron Rivera was like, hey, we have to cut you because we thought you would never play again. You messed up our long-term plan, son.
You were almost too good.
You're much better than we expected. You're supposed to not even play again. That'd be like if Ryan Shazier ever came back and Steelers were like, hey, yeah, that was all for show. We're sorry. We're going to have to cut you. We already went a different direction in linebacking. That's how it was, with Alex Smith. They're like, yeah, it was nice whenever we had the injuries and you came back and filled in nicely for us, but get lost. So, I don't know.
I think Patriots cutting Cam opens the door to have him go back to Washington, help old Riverboat Ron.
Do they still need a quarterback, though? They going with Fitzmagic, aren't they?
They are going with Fitzmagic. They did, but he's 100 years old.
Speaking of quarterbacks, because I'm just going to throw this in there because I don't want to forget about it. What the hell are the Eagles doing? They trade for Minshew. They have Flacco, the legend, very similar style to Minshew, a gunslinger throwing the ball everywhere. And then they also have Jalen Hurts, which is similar to those guys too, because you know how Flacco likes to run the spread and how he's a dual threat QB, So it's are they going to have 3 different offenses where they're just running the teams out there, trying different things? Because I honestly don't know what their strategy is. And I've seen that they were trying to get Deshaun Watson, but how do you make that move?
I have no idea.
So is the move to get Minshew as a trade piece for Houston? Right?
I mean, it could be. I honestly am high on Minshew, and I would have liked him to be in Pittsburgh, as that backup for Ben, because I think with what they're trying to do, he's an ideal fit for the system.
He might be available. He might be available.
And when you look at what Pittsburgh's trying to do offensively, it's 100% it's driven off of Ben throwing the ball and getting things open, and it's just the short passing game is right in his wheelhouse.
Well, I mean, there's a couple parts here. A lot of people are hating on Urban Meyer, and I don't know why. Because he played it very well. Minshew went through, did that. A lot of guys are saying that he should have came out and said publicly that he was looking to trade Minshew to get a better deal. But, you don't want to do that. That makes you seem like a dick. Who's going to come play for you if you're yeah, we just used you. Now we're trying to use you as a trade piece, What free agent's going to sign with you, not knowing if they had a fair deal? Now he can just say, hey, we had a battle. It was really close, but we don't want to split locker room, so we traded Minshew for a 6th-round pick. I thought he played it perfect. I just think a lot of people are out to get him for some reason, and maybe it's because all the fake injuries he had to get out of jobs, but it's all right. You got to respect the guy. He knows how to win. At least he's trying this. If he fails, it's no different than Saban. No different. What if a Nebraska job is miraculously open, and Urban Meyer goes there, and he redeems them. I think that would be like a bigger redemption story than anything. Not that it would never happen, because he could end at Texas or something. But like that's like the level where he's going to play this out. If it works, it works. People are calling out his offense, saying it's too simple. Have you not watched any NFL? Most offenses are the exact same. Players can get traded to another team and not even practice for a week and play a starting position and know everything that's going on. Like, these commentators is like a joke almost. It's like, oh yeah, Urban Meyer's offense, that's like the Stone Age of offenses. And then it's like, every offense is basically the same. What are you talking about? Except for when they did like the Wildcat thing, in which kind of disappeared. Like any player, and I'm not even joking, when's the last time you heard of a star player go to a new team and had to wait a week to learn their system, Matt? Never.
Oh. No, it's pretty much a copycat.
Yeah, so everyone knows exactly what they're doing. So just because Urban Meyer's trying to do something a little bit different with his offense doesn't mean that it's Stone Age. Like, just some of the stuff I saw in it was like, all right, leave him alone. Like, I respect the guy. Not a fan, really, but if he wanted to come to Michigan, like, let's leave that open. I'll keep that positive on the show. What are you laughing about? Do you really want him at Texas, Matt? No?
Doesn't matter.
Hey, and if Nick Saban retires and then Urban Meyer elevates, you don't want an annoying fan base to have him unless it's Michigan, right?
Well, Michigan's an annoying fan base, and they lose all the time. So
is Texas. Texas is worse than us. Are you kidding?
It is literally the same.
We'll save that for the college talk, because I have some stats on that, losing fan bases and stuff. But yeah, for the NFL going around, I didn't see there too many surprising cuts. I did have some extra things here. Let me bring it up so that I know. Steelers, blah, blah, blah. Everyone's talking about Cam Newton. We already talked about that. And then everyone's still talking about it. Like, most of the articles that I saw were on that. Now, I did want to look at the cut downs, but of course, half this article is about that. Let's see. I think that the biggest one, they cut Jalen Samuels for me. Because I can read through this list, and a lot of people are going to be like, oh, yeah, okay, I don't know any of those guys. But Jalen Samuels, he was drafted out of NC State. He was sort of like a hybrid. I thought they were going to use him to kind of backfill Le'Veon Bell and take them to more of a, just a little bit more of an option in their offensive run game, where like he's good out of the backfield. They can run some more power stuff, and they never really did that. It was kind of like they were like, yeah, we're going to use you as a traditional running back, and it didn't work. I don't think that was his strength.
Yeah.
So I was disappointed how they used him, and I wouldn't be surprised if he ended up somewhere like San Diego, or not San Diego, what's the Chargers now? Los Angeles, where like he's like with Eckler doing something like that type of position, and he's very successful. I just don't think the Steelers used him correctly. But I would also not be surprised if he ended up on their practice squad. But then the other thing with the Steelers going on, what's up with the wide receiver room, Matt? Minkah Fitzpatrick is fighting Chase Claypool. Chase Claypool's starting to do his own little like Juju social media type stuff. Did you see that? Yeah,
well, that's been an ongoing thing, though.
Well, it's going to get worse because now Juju's doing like that, what was that, the crate challenge? And everyone's like, oh, yeah, look at him. He's like doing it really slow. It's like, why do it at all? Like, why do it at all? And then he wondered why he only got a 1-year deal, and no other team was interested, Matt. He took a pay cut. You can come at me with this. Juju had to take a pay cut, right? 1-year deal. Why'd they give him a 1-year deal?
Well, I thought they said that several teams had offered more, but he wanted to stay in Pittsburgh because of the system.
Who said that, though? Him?
Yes.
That's like, oh, yeah, bad. Should see all the job offers I'm getting, buddy. But I really like where I'm at.
See, there you go. Now your employer's going to say, wow, we better just give him a contract bonus.
And then it's like, all right, yeah. So this is the article. I looked it up. Juju Smith-Schuster is returning to Pittsburgh taking a massive pay cut. Not just a pay cut, a massive pay cut for a 1-year deal. You don't take a massive pay cut for a 1-year deal if you have other offers on the table for longer. Unless the pay is similar and it was going to be a massive pay cut no matter what. And then he thought, well, I'll just gamble. I'll stay with the Steelers. Maybe Ben will be healthy and we'll go off. But it's like, look, teams are looking at you do stupid things. You're not T.O. You're not Ochocinco. You're not putting up awesome numbers doing stuff like that. You have to be the guy. Like Randy Moss was doing idiotic things, but Hall of Fame, bro. Like Juju's not in the Hall of Fame. And whenever you're out there doing that kind of stuff, and this goes for anyone in the league, you make it, awesome. You got to realize, like, that's a miracle thing to even get there. And then you would think that you'd want to stay if you had that talent. I think if he didn't have the social media stigma against him, I think he would have easily got better offers in the free season. And so now you have to play good this year. So maybe he helps the Steelers. I don't know if I don't feel confident in that at all. But that's my last thing for the Steelers. Do you have anything, or if you can even comment on that?
Like I look at that whole stupid milk crate challenge, and it's like that's something that I would talk to my high school kids about. Right as the season's about to start, or you're like, for us, we're into the season. It's like, don't do anything that's going to take you away from the team. Like he falls and like cracks his ribs on a milk crate. Like how do you tell that to how do you tell that to the other guys in the locker room? Oh yeah, I would be 100%, but I was climbing milk crates and busting my ribs for a TikTok video. Like that's such a bad look, especially with the season like in. I can almost give a little bit of reprieve if you want to build your social media following and you're doing that kind of stuff like way in the off season where like even if a freak injury or something were to happen that you're like you have time to recover from the stupidity of it, or wait till you're done playing.
He already has all the followers, though. That's the one thing that a lot of people are saying, well, he's allowed to do whatever he wants. He gets a lot of money off that stuff. He could just do like weird water bottle challenges and how they flip those or whatever. He could do like the things where, you don't get injured. Like,
or he could just focus on his health and nutrition.
Yeah, like Tom Brady, that's how he makes his side money. I guarantee Tom Brady makes a hell of a lot more money than Juju on the side. Right? Two different people, doing it different ways. Tom Brady has his whole diet thing set up. I mean,
or he just lives off his wife's money.
I mean, the luxury, maybe he's like, you know what? I want that one slice of pizza. Remember he said that in his book? He's going to get the best damn pizza, and he's going to buy it himself with that endorsement money. He doesn't have to rely on his wife for that. So, I don't know. It's a kind of a weird break because this was the year, or this was the time when I thought, like, does the NFL normally not have games when college starts? Like Labor Day weekend, are they usually off, right?
Right.
But they had the shortened season, so I just assumed that they were going to move it up, and they didn't. So now the season's going to be even longer, just in terms of fantasy, because we had talked about maybe doing some more stuff on that, and then the NFL stuff has just been crazy. So we'll have to talk about some more next week. I think most drafts will be done by then. But I don't even know what direction to go. I do know that like we were looking at, when I set up our schedule, the trade deadline was going to be super late. So I bumped that up to Thanksgiving, and I set the finals. I don't think we're playing the last week or two. Like I set it so that it ended on Christmas. Because normally that's the best trash talking time for fantasy football, is like around the holidays, because if you play with family or friends, most likely, hopefully, you're going to see them, So that's the best time to bring it up. Like, hey, your team really sucked this year or whatever. So like I feel like the NFL, they're kind of changing that, and they're like, oh, we're really pushing for like a gambling type thing, but then we're going to make a bunch of decisions that really don't go like for that direction, Like I feel like the way it was where Thanksgiving was a big trash talking point because that was like right before the playoffs. And then you have the championship if you finished early around Christmas and New Year's, which is how I put ours this year. I don't know how many weeks that will lose off the regular season, but I think it's just better in the long run to keep it the same. If they want to keep adding weeks, I wonder how many of those weeks teams are definitely not going to play their guys, right?
Right.
Because, like, why would you? I wouldn't. You get 3 weeks to prep for the playoffs if you have, or 2 to 3 weeks to prep if you have a spot locked up. And if you have a bye, that's even better. Now, maybe sometimes the byes don't work, but I don't know. That's the one thing that I'm going to keep my eye on. But good luck on your drafts if you're having them. Anything else you have for the NFL, Matt?
No.
All right, let's get into college football. The first thing, I already hinted at it a little bit earlier, Scott Frost. He comes out, I think we both picked Nebraska too, because I had anticipated that they would just make the move at quarterback. I know Adrian Martinez seems like he's been there forever, but at some point, you're the guy, you come in, you're supposed to be high-powered offense, you were a quarterback yourself, and that's where I think a lot of people are making the parallels between him and Jim Harbaugh. But they're not really apt. Scott Frost, with his coaching career, he's had that one good year, the claimed national championship at UCF. He also had an 0-12 year. So, like, maybe that 1 year was just really luck lining everything up for him. I think whenever he took that job, I believe it was him, where he brought a lot of his staff from UCF and didn't really go for a more national staff. I think that really hurt them because recruiting hasn't been as high. You have a bunch of guys that have all ties to Florida, Central Florida, because, I mean, let's be honest, UCF isn't hiring top-notch, nationally known assistants, you know? So he had the opportunity for that. Even the Nebraska boosters were kind of pushing him, saying, like, hey, you should get some more guys in here. Didn't go for it. Now he's there. It's like year, 5, 6 for him? 4? I mean, I know he had the coronavirus year, but he only has 12 wins, Matt. 12.
Yeah, that is kind of surprising.
I mean, I thought that was, him and Harbaugh, I thought were both going to be, those are solid hires. No matter what, they're going to have good careers there. And that's going to be something to bring them back. But, like, he's in the easier division. Like, yeah, look, the 12 wins. He's had 12 wins. Someone posted it. I think, did I send it to you? Where for Scott Frost to match Harbaugh's record, he has to go 37-1. That is ridiculous in the weaker division. Like, I know Harbaugh had his Ohio State problem, but, like, Scott Frost has not had a winning season with Nebraska. His highest wins total has been 5. Just bad all around. I guess, so he wasn't the coach when UCF went 0-12. He was 6-7, so he's been coaching as a head coach for 6 years now. This is his 6th season. He had the one winning year, which was his undefeated season at UCF. So I don't know, is that like a fluke? Has to be, right?
I don't know. It just, something doesn't add. I mean, it felt like he was on the right track when he was the OC at Oregon. It felt like he had that claimed national championship. Like, he had the pieces in place, but just can't bring it together because I don't know why in Nebraska.
I just wonder if, and so the reason I kept bringing up Jim Harbaugh is I wanted to get your idea on this, because I wonder how many schools where you have a guy like this. Michigan had Harbaugh, very similar, both alums, both quarterbacks, both success elsewhere. Harbaugh took basically a 50% pay cut, right, this year? So, like, now even, like, Paul Feinbaum is saying, like, he's a lame duck coach. No one in the history of coaching has taken a pay cut that massive to give it another year or two. Because, like, I know they had the coronavirus last year. They didn't end up playing Ohio State. They probably would have got murdered. But that's a weird thing. So Harbaugh ended up gutting his entire staff, hiring everyone fresh. He says he gives everyone control every year. Who knows? We'll see if that's the thing. But do you think that should be a trend more? And we don't know how it's going to play out because they haven't played a game this year yet with the new staff. But, like, for Nebraska, who are you really going to get? Should they just tell Scott, hey, you're taking a pay cut. We're gutting your staff. We're taking the pay cut from you, and we're giving it for you to hire all new assistants, and we're going to have like the athletic director or whoever, like some legend from Nebraska step in and say, that's enough. Like, I'm going to get you some national guys. Because, I mean, basically that's what Harbaugh did. Is it going to pay off? Who knows? But, like, where's Nebraska going to go from here?
I don't know. I mean, I think that could possibly help. But the bottom line to it is that you have to get the recruits on campus, and you got to show that you're building towards that progress.
Well, see,
like, you know,
that's the one thing where that you can definitely tell when Harbaugh took that deal, the recruiting has dipped. Now, if they come out and they go start the season 10-0, does the recruiting stay that way? Probably not, because it's only been a couple months, and it was the coronavirus shutdown season. So with Nebraska, they're already recruiting low, like 45 or something. Can you go much lower if you got your staff? I don't think so.
No, I don't think.
And I mean, like, it's week 0, so we'll probably never talk about Nebraska the rest of the year until Scott Frost is actually fired. Because, like, if they're winning 3 games this year, they could beat Michigan for all I know. Who knows? But, like, I think this is going to be the year where you have a guy like Brett Bielema come in. He's out there. He's pumped. Like, you can just see the difference where his team is excited for him. And I wonder how successful he's going to be. Because he was successful at Wisconsin. He had the system there. Everyone talked about Barry Alvarez maybe running that team a little too much. He goes to Arkansas. Now he has ties recruiting in the South. Whether the Arkansas deal was a raw deal for him or not, you can argue it either way. He went to the NFL. I think he was with Belichick, right? I don't think he went to Saban. Like, he went to one of those coaching recovery camps that everyone goes to. Either Belichick or Saban. So I think he was with Belichick, just working with him, comes in with Illinois. And his players, you could tell in the locker room before the game, they were pumped. He was happy to be there. His wife was happy to be there. She's talking about how great it is to get a first win at Illinois. Scott Frost's wife is rumored to be in Florida, ready for him to just be fired. That's the message board brewery. Which everyone kind of knows. It's like, reminds me of the Christmas tree thing with Jimbo Fisher. It's like, who puts the Christmas tree out first week in December to get picked up? Didn't even make it to the season. So now it's like, oh yeah, your wife was there on Friday, and then next thing you know, she's in Florida after that big loss. It's like, maybe things aren't that good, buddy. Because that's when you would need the support the most. But I think Illinois, and for all we know, these teams could be the best 2 teams in the West. We don't know yet. Week 0. What if Illinois ends up 11-1? I wouldn't be surprised. Bielema has won 2 or 3 Big Ten West, Big Ten championships, right?
Oh, if he just outright wins the Big Ten, because he has that SEC pedigree.
Well, I think Illinois, as much as I hate to admit it, because it's same for basketball, I think they're kind of a sleeping giant because they let a lot of the recruits in their area, high dense population area, they let them go. Let them go to Iowa. Let them go to, I know Northwestern's a little bit of a different situation, but you let them go to Nebraska and things like that. So if he can keep them home, don't let them go to Wisconsin. So he won. Did he actually win the division? So he did win 3 conference titles at Wisconsin. And then his best season at Arkansas was 8-5. He had a losing record overall there, which I knew that because the last season was kind of a bad year. But I think they just had a couple of bad breaks. But Illinois, I mean, their schedule, it really isn't tough, Matt. They have UTSA, then Virginia, which would probably be their first real challenge. I mean, if Nebraska ends up being a bust. Maryland, Purdue, Charlotte. Then finally Wisconsin and Penn State. That's their make or break part right there in October. But Penn State's coming off a bye. So after the Wisconsin game, you basically have a bye with Charlotte, the Wisconsin game, a bye, and then Penn State. Followed by Rutgers, another bye. I mean, if they have a good team, then Minnesota, Iowa, and then Northwestern. So maybe the end of the year you trip up a little bit, but the schedule's set up pretty well. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they started the season, what would that be, 7-0, 6-0 going into the Wisconsin game? Who knows? Like, no one knows how good the recruiting is. They're supposed to have a pretty senior-heavy team, which is always good. You have a new coach that comes in, gets everyone fired up. Those guys are tired of losing. They want to win. Let's see what happens. Illinois in the West. Hasn't been done since Juice Williams. Taking down Ohio State, right? I think he beat them, didn't he? The Juice went in the Big Ten that year. I don't know, because like other than Iowa, Wisconsin, like that division's up for grabs. Nebraska's like, I think you would almost have to just go on a tear because Nebraska ends up, they have to play. That's not the right year. Why didn't it take me to the right year? I think that their team this year, they have to go to Oklahoma. They have to go to Michigan State. They play Michigan. And then they have to play Ohio State. So you get, I mean, they dodge Penn State, but you get 3 of the 4 toughest crossover games. And you have to go to Oklahoma. Oh, my gosh. They play Fordham and then Buffalo. If Scott Frost, if he can't beat those 2 teams, he has to be fired, right? When do you think he gets fired? Oklahoma?
I would think there.
I mean, if he's 2-1 going into Oklahoma, they obviously let him coach. If he drops one of the next 2, he could be 1-2, gets killed by Oklahoma. They make him step down, I think.
But I think you hit the nail on the head, though. Like Nebraska, if you're unless you're like really old and follow like 90s and 80s football, like you're not thinking Nebraska as Nebraska because they've been average to bad in the modern era. So like I think who are you attracting to coach Nebraska?
Well, see, that's where, I mean, are you able to poach a Big 12 coach possibly? I mean, someone was throwing out Will Muschamp. I saw the Nebraska thing where or an ESPN article, I think, where they just took like one random Twitter and they said that was like the hot tip on Nebraska coaches. It was just one guy. I'm like, you couldn't even at least find 5 different guys and put together a list? Why are you only looking at one guy's Twitter of who he thinks would be realistic candidates? It wasn't even a blue check mark. So it was just like a Nebraska blog. But yeah, they were talking about maybe luring Matt Campbell. But if Harbaugh's gone, because his season goes bad, that's supposed to be the guy that Michigan wants. So is Nebraska really going to beat them out? No way. Like, there's no way Nebraska's going to pony up money to pay for or to outbid Michigan, right? So then you're back to the drawing board. You go for like a guy like Will Muschamp. That's who they were saying. Did I mention that? Like, I don't even know what other direction. Like, if I were them, I would beg Bob Stoops. He's like coaching the Dallas Roughnecks or whatever. Why not? Right?
Yeah.
Like, he's always wanted to be like, he coached at Iowa or whatever, or he played at Iowa, coached at Oklahoma. If he wants to really be back in the game, that's the Midwest right there. Their biggest program outside of Oklahoma, right? I guess Oklahoma's not really the Midwest considered, but that right there, them or either Iowa. It's not like Kirk Ferentz is stepping down. Could you imagine if Kirk Ferentz finally retired and then they just hired Bob Stoops? Like, that would be a ridiculous Iowa hire. And like Nebraska fans, meanwhile, they're hiring Will Muschamp. Like, I think then that would become a real rivalry because it seems like Iowa and Nebraska hate each other, but Iowa, I think they've just been beating them. So like Nebraska, can you really be mad at them? I'm going to look it up because they play that Thanksgiving game now. And I'm like, all right, that's a big one because I think that's going to be one of the parts where like the Big Ten needs those rivalries if other conferences keep expanding and expanding. Yeah, Iowa's won 6 in a row. Like, that's not a big rivalry coming back into the Big Ten. where you're losing 6 games in a row. No wonder you don't like them. Nebraska only has a 10-game win advantage. If that continues, Iowa could take the lead in that series, going back to their first game in like 1891. They didn't play that many times, though. So, I don't know. Anything else you have on that?
No, that's it.
The other big thing that came out, just to mention it before we get into the week 1 stuff, the Big 12 announced that they are looking at expansion candidates. And I know we've been talking about it for a while, but I just wanted to bring it up because the focus is centered on BYU. And I just want to say again, I think that could be the move that saves the Big 12. Because BYU is a legit national program. I know a lot of media coverage doesn't like it because of the Mormon angle. But I will say BYU has a big following. I saw an article today looking them up before the show where they have like one of the biggest followings in Vegas of all places because I don't think they drink, right? So that's crazy. And if you're going to try to get into some of those other markets that right now not even the Pac-12 has, the only thing is they're so far west. Like the Big 12 doesn't have Colorado anymore or like a bridge out there. So at some point, is it only for football? If you bring them only for football, that doesn't save your conference. Remember the Big East tried to bring in TCU and who else for like a year, and then the Big East immediately was like, nah, we're done. And all those basketball schools left.
Yeah.
Because like Kansas has to still be like begging to go elsewhere. And I know it hasn't been announced yet, but like you have to think that the silence on those other conferences and even the Pac-12 was like, no. Like they came out and said, no, we're done. There's no candidates right now that they want, which is a slap in the face to Oklahoma State, Texas Tech, Kansas, and Iowa State that have flat out said that they were talking to other conferences. Every other conference says no, so now you're back to the drawing board. I would, if I were them, I would add BYU. The schedule, I would do whatever it takes to try to work something out where they could play all sports. And I wouldn't even be against adding Boise State. Give them a travel buddy, you know, someone that's kind of close to them. West Virginia's already out on the other side, though. So do you expand again? Do you bring in Cincinnati? I don't even know if they would want to come at that point. But if you're trying to make a move towards like a Pac-12 merger, bring in Boise and BYU and see what happens. So that's what I think they should do. A lot of push on UCF, but they're still a regional school. Unless you can get them to change their name to the University of Orlando. People aren't going to watch UCF when they have Florida Gators, Florida State, and Miami to watch. They're just not. I don't care how many times you talk about how many alums they have. The alum thing, as I talked about in terms of like TV market and viewers and stuff, you got to look at the alumni network, which I went through. A lot of Big Ten schools are on that list. Just because UCF has the student base now, they're not paying like 10 years from now. Like you need 30 years of dedicated fans graduating before that starts to take effect. Who knows what college football would look like by then? Change the name to Orlando. Change it. There's no argument against it in my mind. You're tied to the city then. It's a big city, a major city that's international. I mean, you could argue that that's bigger than Cincinnati. I mean, who knows? I don't know what the population would be. But that's my thought on it. What do you think? Do you think that they should do anything? Or do you think they should just hope that their teams don't leave?
I think there's enough to holding it down that they should be okay.
Yeah, because, I mean, I'm just worried about West Virginia, if I'm being honest. I hope that something comes out of it where they can go and find a landing place that just isn't out of left field, you know? Because, like, I would hate for them to come in and be like, oh, Newsflash, we're back playing in the Big East, and we're just going to be independent of football or something where they kind of just fall off. And then Pitt's there, and Pitt doesn't really have a rival unless they start playing Penn State, which probably isn't going to happen. I don't know. Cincinnati, Orlando, or Cincinnati's slightly larger, 65. Orlando's 67. This is just in terms of population. And Orlando's slightly ahead of Pittsburgh. But I still stand with it. In terms of media markets, I didn't look up the media market thing, but I would say that they have to be. They have an NBA team, and they have Disney. So why not? You know. But I don't know. That's the last thing I have for this. Let's get into the first thing, or the week 1 games. It did pop up though for me that Orlando's 17th overall in media market. So it's like a top 20 city. Just name your college that. Week 1, actually, where did I even put it? Oh, it starts on Thursday because that's what we were looking at last week. So technically they have these in as week 1 games, but the big one, Thursday night, you're back to Big Ten, which the Big Ten, let's be fair, they really set this up where in the past, it seemed like all the SEC games and all the other conferences kind of had their showcase games early, especially the ACC, because it seems like they had Labor Day lockdown. Now the Big Ten had week 0. That game was supposed to be in Dublin, I saw. Right? Why? Nothing says Irish like Illinois, Nebraska football. But your Thursday night game on Fox, Ohio State at Minnesota. Who do you got?
I'm going with Minnesota.
No.
Yes, I'm willing it to happen.
You're going to row that boat?
Yes, I'm rowing hard. I might have to because of Ida.
Well, I know I saw LSU took their team already, and they were practicing in Houston just to get out of there. And Pennsylvania's supposed to get hit by a lot of rain, right?
Yes, we did. I got soaked today.
Yeah, I didn't know it was all the way up there yet. So there is a Wednesday game, UAB and Jacksonville State. So if you're really ready to keep it going, that's the only big matchup. Like there's some other cross ones where like NC State plays Florida or South Florida, and then Rutgers plays Temple and stuff. But we're not going to do the pick'ems on that. The main one is Ohio State, Minnesota, and I got Ohio State. I don't think they're going to lose this. I almost wonder at the end of the year, a lot of focus is on in the Big Ten, Scott Frost and Jim Harbaugh, what's going to happen with both of them this season and where do they go. But Ryan Day, I almost have to think, he really can't get any higher. I mean, he's had an unbelievable head coaching career at Ohio State. They've been in the playoffs. He's been close to a national championship. If he comes up short again, where do they go? They can't recruit any better. Do you think he jumps to the NFL? That seems to be the rumor, is like he's been interested in the NFL, but he kind of wants that championship at Ohio State first, which he's been close. But if you see the NFL as like that end goal, how many years do you keep trying? Because if you keep losing, at some point does that luster shine off, and then you're stuck coaching in like Cleveland? I don't know. I think it just depends. If they start losing and his record starts going down, I bet he makes a jump. But I don't think it's going to be this year. Although he has a new quarterback. Friday, North Carolina and Virginia Tech. Who do you have in the big ACC matchup?
I'm going to go with old Mac Brown and UNC.
I think the same. I think they're ranked higher than what they should be. And I'm not really sure how Texas fans should feel about that. But just having that team and like the quarterback and everyone kind of going all in on them, they did lose a lot of NFL playmakers. And that's going to be hard to make up for them. We also have Michigan State at Northwestern, again, carrying on the Big Ten, really taking over this week when they used to never have conference games this early. What do you think in that one?
Which one was that again?
Michigan State is going to Northwestern.
I'm going to go Northwestern there.
Man, I have to agree with you again. So far we're only different on the Ohio State game, and that's just for luck you're hoping. I don't know what to think of Michigan State's staff. I know they beat Michigan last year, but they looked like they were a mess. And both teams looked like they were disasters. Same with Penn State. I mean, they looked like they were a disaster for most of last year, too.
Yeah.
But that was a tough year. So are they going to be able to put it together? I don't think so. Not against Northwestern. Northwestern has too much consistency. So I think that they keep it going. And I think the West is going to be a lot tougher than what people think. But then you have, we'll just go through Michigan at Western Michigan at Michigan real fast. Who do you got?
Go with Michigan.
I got the same. UMass at Pitt.
That better be Pitt.
You don't know that. Pitt's a bigger favorite than Michigan, though. They're a 38-point favorite.
No, UMass is up there with Bishop Sycamore as far as playing potential.
Yeah, but I feel like they've had some wins, haven't they? I know they were like god awful last year.
They were rough.
Then the big one, Penn State at Wisconsin, the big noon game, which annoyed me. How much marketing did Fox put into the big noon Saturday kickoff before putting that Illinois-Nebraska game at 1:20? I actually got to watch the Steelers preseason game again. That's what they showed on before that. No pregame, tailgate, nothing. It just went from the preseason game right to that game. And I was like, what the hell? Big noon. I had my whole morning set for the big noon. And instead, I'm watching a replay. So, it's back, though, this week on Fox. What do you got in this one?
On Wisconsin.
I hate to say it, but I think the same. I just don't think Penn State looked rough last year. I know that they don't pull enough media attention like Harbaugh and Michigan. I think I've been saying it for like 3 or 4 years now. Both programs are identical, except for the one time that James Franklin beat Ohio State. That's the only difference between them. I think they're like splitting wins. And now it's like you got to go on the road. Your team looked awful last year. Are you going to have those answers? And is he looking to get out? Because like that's another Nebraska thing. If James Franklin if he decides to leave Penn State, like why wouldn't you just throw a ton of money at him? He's already won. Maybe he's tired of playing Ohio State every year. That's not for the championship. I don't know. But that's the one thing but if he's looking for a Florida school, because that was the rumor, I don't know if one of those jobs is going to be open soon. So I don't know where he could go. He's just going to have to ride it out. Let's see. Any other big ones? Oh, yeah. I don't even think this is a big game, but Alabama at Miami.
I think it might end up being a little bit closer than what you think. I mean, I think Alabama's going to win, but I think with the progress that Miami's been making, I think that it'll be a lot closer of a game than people think.
New quarterback. This is the time for Miami to make a statement and really take that jump. Now, if they get embarrassed, I don't know how they stay ranked 14th. And I think that's going to be the big thing. ACC needs that game to be close, I think.
Well, the last time Florida State played Alabama, it destroyed the program. So you got to be careful when you schedule Alabama as your first game of the season.
That's true. Hey, but Penn State played them, and they lost. I don't know if it was Franklin or if it was Bill O'Brien. Maybe that's what put him to the NFL. I can't remember. Indiana at Iowa.
Normally I would go Iowa there, but I think Indiana really had a good thing going last year, and I think that they'll build on that momentum from last year.
Nah, see, I'm going to go Iowa here. I think the consistency really puts a damper in Indiana, and I think that it goes back where Indiana took advantage last year of having a tight-knit team. They didn't have the same distractions as some of the other bigger squads that recruit nationally. I think that's where, other than like Ohio State, where they were focused on the playoff the entire time, teams like Penn State, Michigan, you have recruits from all over. Look how many transfers they had, because if you don't know what's going on, Indiana doesn't have that. They don't recruit that same way. So they were able to take advantage. I think that was fool's gold. and I think they come back to earth this year. Let's see what else. Oh, West Virginia at Maryland.
I'm going to go with old West Virginia.
See, I think this is where things really turn, but I think Maryland beats them. I think for whatever reason, Maryland swept Texas when they played. I think that they're starting to turn around where they win games like this to kind of bump up the Big Ten, and then it's like, okay, you beat Texas, and then you get killed by 50 to like Ohio State, Michigan. What are you doing? Like, how are you not even competitive? And so, like, I think that they're like the program killer in the Big 12, where early in the year, before all their quarterbacks get hurt, they have a good run, and they always win. And I think West Virginia is trending the other direction. I've been wanting them to step up. They should be what Matt Campbell has at Iowa State. They should have been the program that has been pushing Oklahoma for that playoff spot, and they haven't been. And I don't know why. Like, they're basically one of the only other national programs in the Big 12. Texas, Oklahoma. What other football school is there? You could say Oklahoma State, maybe Kansas State. It's West Virginia right now. Why are they not pushing their program harder in recruiting? I feel like they're still stuck in recruiting Florida. And guess what, buddy? You don't play there anymore. They should have shifted to recruiting Texas pretty heavily, and I think they could have taken it to the next level. And instead, they're recruiting Florida, and they're losing battles to schools like North Carolina now.
Yeah.
And so I think that really hurts them. And I don't think they're going to bounce back until they either shift or they get lucky and get into the ACC or some other conference, SEC, where they play in Florida again. And so if I were them, I'd be calling up Miami all the time like, hey, you want us back, buddy? Hey, buddy, what are you up to? Hey, come on. Those are fun times.
Hey, dog.
All right. Looking through this, I got two more for you. The big one, Georgia at Clemson.
Clemson.
You think so?
Yeah, I think since the NILs came on, now you can just legally straight up pay for people. I think Georgia loses their luster.
All right, because I think Georgia right now, for whatever reason, I have a feeling that they get this win. They get this win, and then I think that you really start to see some cracks in like the football program for like Clemson and the ACC. But I still think Clemson rebounds and makes the playoffs. Like, I think this is like their wake-up call, their only loss, and I think it's really close. Like, remember how they eked one out versus A&M a couple years ago? I think it's like the opposite of that. Georgia fans think they're back. The SEC tries to get two teams in the playoffs, and I think that it really drives playoff expansion that seems to kind of have just stopped. I think it comes back. Then the last Saturday game I had is LSU at UCLA. UCLA looked really good on Saturday. They played Hawaii, though.
Tough to gauge.
They have Chip Kelly, though.
They did have Chip Kelly.
And he had that theme song, I Love My Ducks, when he was at Oregon.
Yes, he did.
So I'm going to go UCLA. I think Coach O is sinking that ship. Too many scandals. You cannot survive that many scandals. And I think UCLA uses that. And I honestly think that they are going to push for that fourth playoff spot. They have the quarterback.
Wow.
They have the system. I don't think they're really coming out of nowhere. I just think that the Pac-12 really doesn't have anything. And that's my wild card this year. Because, like, remember, whenever things come out.
You're in.
Like, I don't know what. Their recruiting hasn't been too bad. You beat LSU. Then you just have to make it through the Pac-12. I think a 2-loss UCLA, maybe they don't quite make the playoffs. But even a 1-loss, 2-loss, like, they're still going to be right there, I think. because that's assuming like Clemson gets another loss or something. Like I still think that they're right there, and I wouldn't be shocked to see them. I mean, they do have to travel to Washington, but like if Chip Kelly finally has this thing rolling, this is going to be the year. So that's my prediction in the Pac-12. UCLA wild card. That's pretty much it for the Saturday type stuff. I know we're going long, but I did remember that there is a Sunday game, Notre Dame at Florida State.
Oh, you just casually remembered?
Yeah, I did remember because it's in a separate spot here. Who do you have?
Of course. I'm going with the upset. Go Noles.
It's at home for them.
It is.
If Notre Dame loses, where do they go? They're not in the NAACC this year, right?
Right.
So if they lose this game, I don't think they make the playoffs.
No, they don't.
Because they also have to play Wisconsin, Cincinnati, USC, and UNC, 4 teams that are ranked inside the top 15.
I think when you look at the schedule, anyone, and you know, say whatever bias you want to claim, but I think any team that loses to Florida State, they're immediately going to get like dumped on their head because of the recent record of Florida State getting beat by people.
So your dream season of a 4-win Florida State with wins over Notre Dame and Clemson?
From what I've seen this spring, I think they can do it. I mean, it's not like this isn't Clemson that still has Trevor Lawrence. I know perfectly what it's like to lose your Heisman Trophy winning quarterback. There's chinks in the armor.
And just to be fair, remember, he played good against Notre Dame, but they lost that game without him last year. So you have to have that game-breaking quarterback.
And, you know, I look at, too, the Florida State-Notre Dame game was relatively close. Like, it wasn't – Notre Dame pulled away towards the end, but it wasn't a complete smackdown. And I think if they continue to build, like, with the stuff that they did in the transfer portal – and having a consistent quarterback in Mackenzie Milton that can operate Norvell's offense, if they have someone that's actually reading the plays and getting the stuff done that they need to within the focus of his offense, like I love the direction that it's going in. They just have to keep building on what was happening, and I think that they can be competitive.
And I mean, they have the talent. That's one of the things we talk about. Notre Dame hasn't been recruiting as well as they should with 2 playoff appearances, and that's why they get blown out in those playoff appearances. They either have to start upping their recruiting, and I also wonder what would happen if they did join in ACC where they could really just pinpoint their recruiting in Florida, like I said West Virginia could do. I think it would give them a help. It has to hurt their recruiting where they're like, oh yeah, we'll recruit California, we might go out there twice a year. Like, why would a kid go there? You can go play for Chip Kelly at UCLA. That's what I don't understand now. But the last game I have, I'm picking Notre Dame, by the way. I think that they're going to win this one. I think they end up with 3 losses, though. Although I wouldn't be shocked if Florida State beat them. I just don't think that Florida State's ready yet. This would be their coming out party if they did pull it off. And then the last game, the Monday night game, Louisville at Ole Miss.
I want Louisville to win, but it's gonna be Lane.
Yeah, I think Ole Miss is going to win this one. And you're right. Those are the type of games that other conferences need to knock out some of these other schools that aren't the flagship schools that they take off their Ole Miss hat and put on their Alabama one when playoffs roll around. Right?
That's what I would think.
Like, I don't think fans of Iowa are taking their shirts around, turning them around, and cheering for Ohio State in the playoffs. But you know damn well that those other SEC schools outside of probably Florida, and I mean Georgia probably cheers for SEC too. They're probably like, Alabama's really good. Look at our recruiting. If once we beat them, we'll just cheer for them in this bowl game. 10 bowl games later, they're still cheering for Alabama, Matt. And they're like, what are we doing here? So, I don't know. You got anything else for week 1?
No, that's it.
A lot of good games. We'll see what happens, and then we'll start getting into more of our football show. Good luck with turning things around, Matt. Hopefully you guys can right the ship and get a couple good wins going. I don't have anything for the final bell. Do you have anything else?
Just for our listeners that are in the path of the hurricane, stay safe.
Yeah, definitely. Tell your friends. Download the show. We're still going weekly with the football stuff. Football is back, so we'll be good there. And thanks for listening. We'll see you next week.